What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find, as always, right here on the Crossover channel. My name is Kanaye, and I'm joined with Josh, and today we're going to be bringing you all some of our hot takes going into the 25-26 season in college basketball. Pretty much just going to have a little conversation about some of the bolder ideas we have regarding certain teams, certain players, certain programs throughout the country, and where we think their ceilings, how far we think they could go in the year. If we see players making big leaps, if we see players underperforming, we're just going to throw out some of our hot takes here, go back and forth. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on the Crossover channel, please do anything you can to engage with our videos, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about us. It goes a long way with driving YouTube's algorithm, getting a larger audience watching our videos. So let's get right into it. I'll throw it over to you first, Josh. What is your first hot take for this video today?
I guess the rules for this is it's just like an open talk session. We're just going to be throwing ones out there. But we're going to start light, and we're going to try and bounce off each other and see who can get the hotter take until we just reach the hottest take we can think about right now. I'm going to start with something somewhat light. I'm going to say UNLV wins the Mountain West this year. I know there's not too much talk about the Mountain West right now, and we have a lot of fun things to talk about. San Diego State, we'll be talking about them later on in the month, I feel. But UNLV is really not as far behind as you might think. They had a great transfer portal season. They brought in a guy like Miles Shea, who I think will be the main ball handler for this offense. And yes, losing D-Dan Thomas to LSU is not the best thing to do, but this team was so well reloaded that it almost has to make sense that they can push themselves into that, main race with San Diego State. There really isn't anybody behind either of those teams, too, so it really comes down to both of them. Personally, I feel like San Diego State wins the Mountain West, but I really wouldn't be surprised if UNLV does it. And I don't think it's a hot take at all to say.
I mean, hey, call it if you want maybe a lukewarm take. I think it is a pretty hot take. John Rodson has came out and said he thinks San Diego State will be the best non-Power 5 team in the country this year. I am also under that same wavelength where I just think SDSU is really going to roll through the Mountain West this year. I love the talent that they have. You did mention, yes, who was it?
Miles Shea. I feel like I really have a lot of hopes in Miles Shea. He performed so well last year.
Yeah.
And there's not a huge jump, if you're going to ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the world is definitely there for, like you said, a Miles Shea to have a big year. But I just don't know that UNLV will play to the level that SDSU will. I do have to relook over both of their out-of-conference scheduling because I think those games are going to be big in terms of how the Mountain West race, which pretty much does look like a two-horse race between those two programs in terms of who's able to come out on top. But I got to say, I like that. I think it's a pretty bold take to start off the video. Great start. I'm going to get into my first hot take. Maybe call this lukewarm. Maybe call this me buying into the hype a little bit too much. But mine is that Cohen Carr will be an All-American at the end of the season. Whether it's a third, second, I don't think a first team is in the realm possibility. I would probably aim more towards that third team. But hey, Cohen Carr, we already know how athletic he is. We talked about it in our, I'm forgetting which video off the top of my head, but our preseason All-Americans video. Please go check that out if you haven't already. I had him as an honorable mention. I think there's a real chance that he could end up as a third, second, maybe even second team All-American. We know we can do in transition, highlight real dunks that you see him throw down nearly nightly. And if he's able to really improve the outside shot, which for the first time in his collegiate career, I do think we're going to see that this year in terms of his efficiency from deep. And on top of that, if he can also kind of develop more of a back to the basket game at times where he can kind of almost in a way just physically bully defenders the way Zion Williamson did. Granted, I'm not saying Cohen Carr is Zion Williamson, but I think their physical makeup is very similar. I think he's going to be able to get on the glass, which is going to make for a lot of second chance point opportunities. And if he can play make out of the post as well, I think that's going to be crucial for Tom Izzo and how far Michigan State can go this year. Book it right now, Cohen Carr, All-American, and lottery pick.
I love to believe that, and honestly, I'm on your side. But this is a really hot take. Like, I feel like in our little bubble of college basketball, we've both been on the Cohen Carr train for over a month now. I really liked him last year. I feel like he's bound to have a blowout year this year, given the amount of space on Michigan State's roster that's free for him to take. That said, a third team, it's still like a little out there. I know we both consider that to be a pretty reasonable thing, but if you ask the average college basketball fan, Cohen Carr is not really considered for that role. He might not even be a guy most people would consider third team all Big Ten, which I think that's a little egregious if you're going to ask me. But that is a hot take. I'm going to be honest with you, that is a really hot take to start. But I think I can one. I think I can one it up.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I just really quickly, I mean, hey, I think if Cohen Carr wasn't getting the media coverage he is right now going into this season, over the course of this entire summer, where people really do believe that he has a chance to play his way into being a lottery pick, then I think maybe this would be a little bit of a hotter take. Nonetheless, it is still kind of a reach in a little bit of a way just because we don't know that Cohen Carr is actually able to kind of develop into an All-American level talent. But nonetheless, I'll let you get on to your next take. I'm really curious to see where you go here.
This one, we're going to keep in the Big Ten. Braden Smith breaks the all-time D1 record in assists. This is a little-known thing. Not that many people know he's available to do this. He, I think, needs to average close to 10 assists a game, maybe a little bit more if I'm not wrong, closer to 11 depending on how things are, a season to do this. It's not impossible. There's talks about him averaging as much as 13 a game if he's really passing the ball around that much, which he's known to do. This is his senior season. He's pretty much the best passer and the best assist maker in the league or in D1 right now. I feel like it is a hot take just because no one really knows or no one like truly was counting this until like very recently, and it was only brought up to me very recently as well. But it's a hot take when you really consider how big of a deal breaking a record like that is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a complete chance that Braden Smith is able to break Bobby Hurley's record. For reference, I just looked it up just now. Bobby Hurley totaled 1,076 assists in his playing career at Duke. Smith is currently at 758. He averaged, what was it, 8 or 9 assists this past season?
Yeah.
Regardless, he's 318 behind Bobby Hurley. If you put that over a, say, 35 game sample size, might be a few games less, could be more. It's all dependent on how far Purdue can go this season. But he would probably have to average around 9 assists, maybe a little bit more, which, again, this is something that Braden Smith is totally capable of. I believe he is the leading assister facilitating player in the country, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, again, Braden Smith is one of the best point guards we've ever seen lace it up in college basketball. So I think that's definitely something that we could end up seeing, though it is nonetheless going to be really hard for that to happen, which, again, I definitely am a believer Braden Smith is capable of. But getting on to my next take, I'm going to throw it over the Big East here. I'm going to say both Georgetown and Providence make the NCAA tournament. If you watch our Big East preseason overview, you heard about how high I am on both those teams, and specifically just the bubble in general in the Big East this year, where the last 2 years in that conference, the bubble really just wasn't all too exciting, but I think there's a lot of talent on those teams that are going to kind of be riding on the line of making a tournament or not. And Providence, I think, they're the wild card in that conference where they have a lot of talent in both their youth that they're bringing in with 5-star freshman Jameer Jones, along with their transfer portal class like Jason Edwards coming over from Vandy, along with Duncan Powell coming from Georgia Tech. And I think that Kim English, this is a really big year for him, just considering he's kind of had really bad injury luck his first 2 seasons in Friartown, but ultimately hasn't been able to make the NCAA tournament yet. And kind of going over to, I guess, the other team in that rivalry with Ed Cooley at Georgetown. I love the moves that Ed Cooley's done. I'm a big Malik Mack fan. I think he's going to have a big season in year 2 at Georgetown, along with adding a guy like KJ Lewis, who kind of had to play second or third fiddle on last year's Arizona team with Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, Trey Townsend, and the likes of those players. But I think there's a lot of guys who have a chance to make big leaps for that Georgetown program. But I think they're pretty stagnant in terms of where I think they're going to be as a team throughout the course of the year. Providence, again, they could be really up, they could be really down. I'm really curious to see how that plays out, but I think that both those teams are going to be able to pick up a few upset wins in conference play, specifically Providence. I don't think people fully understand, even right now when Providence has kind of struggled as a program over the last few seasons, still how hard it is to win at the Dunk in Providence, Rhode Island, where you just got fans going crazy. They've definitely had a few beverages up to the point. And let me tell you, I think that's going to be a huge trap game come Big East play. And I think both those programs should be able to stack some wins up enough to build a resume up enough to get into the tournament.
See that? I love this take as well. The only issue, and I think this is kind of the biggest issue as to why this is a pretty hot take in my opinion, is that Providence and Georgetown are fighting for the same spot in a tournament. There really is only one spot I feel that either team could fill. They both feel like first 4, maybe last bye teams. and I just don't see either of them or both of them truly making it. But the window is still there for both to do it, especially the Big East is that strong of a conference. Any of the surrounding conferences in the Power Five are not as good as we originally thought. I mean, I would love to see both teams make it. I feel like Providence is the slight favorite here, but Georgetown has a more inward path given how their schedule is. Providence has really good home games. I would say them like smack dab in the middle of conference schedule with St. John's and UConn. And I know Georgetown's the same thing too, but I feel like the Dunk has that vibe that can really bring down a top team. I'll throw another Big East take in here. I think this is honestly a really hot one if you're going to ask me. There are two number one seeds in the Big East in March Madness this year: UConn and St. John's. I think they both get one seed.
Hey, I mean, that is a hot take for sure, but I would be very, very happy as a huge Big East guy if that ends up happening. I just think that's going to be so good for the sport, so good for the conference, of course. And I mean, like we talked about in our Big East preseason overview, St. John's UConn has a chance to be the best rivalry in the sport this season. And if you have a hypothetical scenario where St. John's and UConn have a chance to meet up 4 times, twice in the regular season, of course, one home, one away for each program, and then again in the Big East Tournament Championship, and then once again perhaps in the Final Four, I think that's all you can ask for as any fan of the Big East. And I mean, yeah, that's a hot take for sure. I'm really curious to see if that really does end up shaping out to happen.
I really like to add with that one as well. Kind of want to put in another hot take.
Yeah, go for
it.
We're
gonna switch conferences a little bit. Let's go to the ACC. Let's have a little discussion here. Cam Boozer, ACC Player of the Year and First Team All-American.
Hey, I mean, I can hear you out there. It's a hot take. I'm on board with the Player of the Year in the ACC. First Team All-American could be a little bit of a reach. Brandon Johnshire has gone on record, says he thinks Cam Boozer can have a similar impact to what Flagg did last year for the Blue Devils in Durham. But again, I just don't know with the amount of returning talent in the sport, the guys, even positionally speaking, just JT Top and Yaxel Lendeborg, Zuby Ejiofor, who's probably would be my pick to be the center on that first team All-American squad. I think it's going to be hard for Cam Boozer to be able to crack that starting, that first team All-America. But I mean, even looking at that freshman class, there's guys like Nate Ament who could definitely steal that thunder from Cam Boozer. Then again, I am on board with him winning ACC Player of the Year, but first team All-American might be somewhat out of reach here.
Yeah, no, I just want to throw it out there because if you want to compare Boozer to Flagg, here's your chance. Flagg, if you remember last year, won both of those awards. Not saying Boozer is Flagg, but there are people that can get behind that ideal, especially considering it's Duke, especially considering Shire has really raised his freshmen so well. I think Flagg is probably one of the best freshmen in Duke history. Hot take in its own. I'll throw it to you for another one.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off your ACC take there. I'm going to stick it out in that conference. I'm going to go on record and say, well, actually I have in the past, but I'm going to reaffirm my belief that one of Notre Dame or Miami will make the second weekend this year in the NCAA tournament. I know that's really bold, but I just love the direction that both these programs are going. I understand they both kind of had tough seasons this last year. Notre Dame was really not all too successful with Michael Shrewsbury, but I do think he's got a lot of motivation to get back on track. They're returning Marcus Burton, who does have a chance to be the nation's leading scorer. They're also adding in Carson Tao from, I believe it was Northern Arizona, who I think he was also the leading rebounder in the country last year. And going over to Miami, yes, they kind of had Jim Larenga stepping down. Really tough kind of scenario there. But go ahead.
No, sorry. I actually kind of want to throw in another team for that whole argument in Virginia. I feel like Malik Thomas, that's a name that you should be hearing a lot more, especially in ACC play. And this now Tony Bennettless team probably fills in that almost third dark horse role. I will say of the three teams you mentioned between Miami, at Notre Dame, and now Virginia, I kind of like Notre Dame the most just because of how good Marcus Burton has been in the past and how much I would trust him to lead what is bound to be the best Notre Dame team of Shrewsbury's young career out in South Bend. That said, great take. I really like that one.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about Miami really quickly. Yeah, you bring in Jay Lucas, who was formerly an assistant at Duke. I'm a really big Jay Lucas guy. I think he's going to kill it in Miami. I love what he's done in the transfer portal, bringing in a guy like Trey Donaldson from Michigan, who really got Michigan, really kind of turned their season around towards the back half where they started off pretty hot, kind of had a slump, and then were able to really turn around. He essentially won them the Big Ten tournament and won that game against UC San Diego for the most part, hitting that dagger shot in the first round of the NCAA tournament. He's a guy who shows up for big games and was in a way forced out of Ann Arbor by Dusty May. I think he's going to be motivated for Miami. They're also bringing in Malik Renew, former five-star at a high school, coming over from Indiana, played for Mike Woodson last year. I think Jay Lucas is going to be able to get the most out of both those guys. And I think the Hurricanes could be in for another year. Another good year where they're able to go on a deep run like they were able to in 2023. Not saying Final Four, but I do think Elite Eight, Sweet 16 is definitely in the realm possibly for both Notre Dame and Miami this year.
I kind of want to I think I can definitely up that one up. I like that take a lot. I kind of want to hop to another conference. Let's do the Big 12. This one I think is one of my favorite hot takes right now. BYU wins the Big 12. And AJ Dybantsa wins Conference Player of the Year.
Hey, I think that's definitely possible. If AJ Dybantsa is as good as advertised, which up to this point, all signs point that way, there's the full possibility that they can. In a way, almost like BYU's roster configuration at times more than I do Houston's. Granted, I think Houston has a little bit better experience and proven winners on their roster, but BYU, again, is really, really talented. You have Rob Wright, who I think is being paid very handsomely to play out in Provo this year. But I love what he can do off the dribble. Richie Saunders, of course, is a great scorer. You bring back other guys. I think there's a really good chance if they're led by Dybantsa in scoring and they put up really large win total this year in Big 12 play, they could definitely win the Big 12, potentially be a 1 seed going into March Madness. And if Dybantsa is the leading scorer on that team that's a 1 seed, then I could definitely see that he would be a top candidate for Player of the Year in that conference. He already is going into the season, but I think that, again, if BYU can look like a true national title threat behind a really, really outstanding year from Dybantsa, then I don't see why he can't win Player of the Year in the Big 12.
Yeah, I've been riding this take, I think, in a little ways for quite some time now. I really like Dybantsa's odds in this one, especially considering how open the Conference Player of the Year race is in the Big 12. But everyone's like, Houston is the 1 seed, the team likely to repeat as Big 12 champions. But I feel like BYU has that secret, not even dark horse, but they're closer than a lot of people think to winning the tournament, and I could see it happening in a lot of different ways.
Definitely, and I think Kevin Young might not be getting the credit he deserves with the job he did last year, where I think that team, in terms of their makeup, really outperformed all expectations that you could have had for them going into the year, and they were just unfortunate in running into Mark Sears making, 11 threes against them in the Sweet 16, so that's obviously a really tough beat there. But for my last hot take, I'm going to show the mid-major ranks some love. Like how you started with your pick for UNLV to win the Mountain West. I'm going to go out and say I think San Diego State, again, will be the best non-Power 5 team in the country. But I'm going to go a step further and say I think San Diego State makes the Elite Eight. I am so high on the big three that they have this year on the roster between Magoon Guath, Miles Bird, who I think is All-American and lottery pick upside, along with Farrah Compton. I just think that, yes, they're a non-Power 5 team, and they're probably going to get nowhere near the love and media coverage that they deserve. But that might be a top 5 big three of any program in the country. I think Miles Bird's going to make a huge leap. He was an honorable mention pick in our preseason All-American predictions video. And I'm really high on Magoon Guath and Farrah Compton. I think they're both going to take big leaps this year, going now into what is their sophomore, junior years. I forget off the top of my head, but again, they both bring great size. Magoon Guath's a legit 7-footer. Farrah Compton's around 6'7", so you have great positional length and size on the wings between Miles Bird and Farrah Compton. And I just think that the scoring ability between those two on the wing, it's going to overwhelm a lot of teams, both in the Mountain West. And I think a lot of Power 5 teams that they could see in the NCAA tournament might not be prepared for it. So I'm really excited to see the Aztecs potentially go on a deep, deep March run.
Yeah, I like this take a lot. San Diego State is probably having a boom year like we haven't seen since 23, and probably even better given that the way we looked at 23 was kind of a surprise year. I think Brian Ducker has his best roster. And Elite Eight, I like that. I like that a lot. I feel like the mid majors are going to have a little bit of a rebound year compared to last year. I kind of have another mid major take since you brought it up as well. ECU
Go for it.
stays ranked to the end of the season and makes their way to, at a minimum, a Sweet 16. I have a lot of hype in this VCU squad. The roster has been pretty consistent. I know they did lose, what was his name to the draft last season. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you remember his name. I think it was Max. Yeah, Max Hogan. But
Right.
the roster brought in a lot of transfers, including Power 5 players, and the coaching hasn't changed. It feels, I mean, the coaching did change. It went to Tony Bennett, or after Tony Bennett's leave, you had VCU take their coach as well. I really feel like the A10 has to have something good happen to them. I mean, we had Dayton 2 years back, if you remember that. I mean, Dayton's always been good, and I know there's always talks about St. Louis with Josh Schertz being there, but the team really hasn't gotten out of the water. I feel like VCU breaks the chain. I don't really have an exact, like, overlying reason, but this roster is one of my favorite mid-majors rosters right now. And because of how, not necessarily weak, but how open the A10 is right now, I feel like it really doesn't take a lot of effort for one team to surpass the Daytons, the St. Joes, the St. Louis's, the other squads in that region, the George Masons, and everything else in that region, and climb. Because I feel like it just has to happen. There has to be a good A10 team this year. Maybe it's just me, but I'm going with it. This is probably the hottest take I can throw out there right now.
Yeah, I love the A10 representation. I do think that VCU is my pick on this very day to win the A10 this year. And I think it is due time that the A10's had a really good team. I love the Power 5 experience to bring in. Also, super big fan of how they're bringing in former Husky Ahmad Noel, former top 40 kid. Hope he has a good year this year for VCU. Granted, because I didn't get to see him too much playing this past year. But again, I think that's a great take. I could definitely see them end the season ranked. Honestly, I think the mid majors will have a little bit of a bounce back year going into March. I do think that we could see, this is kind of like, I guess, a mini hot take just to end it off. Maybe I think we will see one 15-2 upset.
I love that you said that. I said it last year, and I almost regret saying it. And, you know, if you want to look more into the lower mid majors, I'd recommend watching Ryan Hammer's new podcast, Blue Blooded. I'm big fans of them. They just had a video on the lower mid major conferences and a lot of the teams in there. I feel like you're going to see a growth and a real evolutionary change in how a lot of the lower mid majors have dealt with the transfer portal. They brought in a lot of like very small minute level Power 5 players that just couldn't work out in those big teams. They brought in a lot of international prospects, which never really know how they work out, so they could be incredibly good, and you just won't find out until the season starts. And a couple squads did bring in some good transfer and freshman classes. I don't have any specific teams. I feel like the research has to be done by just watching how they work out, but you know, nothing stays stagnant in this world forever, and especially in college basketball. I feel like the whole talk about mid majors can never make it again, these small teams will never win, is a lie, because there are squads that are learning how to work through the transfer portal. They're learning how to work against the higher, bigger spending mid-major and high major squads. And I feel like even in a world like this where the rosters are so deep and so strong, there are always cracks. It's college basketball. It's the best sport in the world. There will be a 15-2 upset eventually. And I feel like you can't leave it alone for, you know, it's been it'll be 3 seasons coming up to this upcoming one where there hasn't been a 15-2 upset. I feel like it breaks now.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with that. I think it's due time that the mid majors kind of reclaim a little bit of the Cinderella magic that they carry. And of course, is a huge reason why we love March Madness. But I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything we had on our Hot Takes episode going into the 25-26 season in college basketball. As always, if you like this episode or anything else you see on the channel, please engage with our videos in any way you can. And until next episode, we'll see you all next time.